Okay, so as we continue, this now goes into Stephen just faded. So
I
in the
just turned into a ghost.
video episode, yeah, we might
That
have
was cool.
some
That was
supernatural
cool.
stuff going on. You like turned
Yeah.
into the color of your microphone there for a second.
Yeah, it was green.
Yeah, that
Like
was wild.
I was sick or something.
So listening, this is going to be a carryover from our last episode, which is 13. This is episode 14. So welcome to 14. Yes, we have the same clothes on. But this is the second part of our Slipknot conversation. So we're just gonna pick it up.
Yes.
Was dealing with a little bit of technical issues. So as they say in the business, Stephen, we'll clean it up in post, right? So
Clean it up in post.
yeah. So we were going through the records and we were kind of weaving in different comments. So we left off just before, and if you were listening to the last episode, thank you for coming back again. We Are Not Your Kind was released in 2019. We talked about that.
Mm.
Again, Unsainted, Soulwave, Firth, Nero
Ah.
Forte. Just love those tracks. It's just such good music. Just
Oh, wait a minute. They also the Chapeltown Rag was a great song too.
yeah, that's right. And they kind of
Yeah.
released that before everything else. That came out
Yeah.
well in advance of that.
I think they actually honestly they released that song the night I went to go see them. I remember being in a car wash, getting my truck washed,
Yeah.
and heard that song. And we were going, it was either that night or the next night. And then they ended up playing that song live. It's like, you guys obviously rehearsed this because they
Yeah.
nailed it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I remember, yeah, I remember that now when that came
Yeah.
out. 2022, the end so far. And there was some fun, crazy stuff. So there was an initial release of the vinyl had the wrong title on it.
Yes.
And I have that copy.
I think I have it too.
Yeah. And I remember getting it from, no, I got it from a record store. Like, it's convenient. So sometimes you can pick up vinyl at Target, but I can't say there was a Target edition of the Slipknot, the end so far. But so different
They see
title.
Slipknot at Target.
Right. Yeah, you can find it in they have the kids mask and everything. They probably do have. I know they have Halloween masks, so you can buy
Right
those.
next to the Barbie aisle.
Yes, it is.
All right.
But the end so far, 2022, September 30th. This is again speculated, and I think now that's been proven that was the final release on Roadrunner. Again, this record was, to me, I'll say, interested in what you think, Stephen. It was kind of a departure, but really it was, I think, more just a matter of, as you look at the 7 releases of full-length records, right, not counting some EPs and the live stuff that you mentioned in the last episode, it just further evolution, right?
Yeah.
Again, the Chapeltown Rag, you mentioned already, the Dying Song, Yen, well received, is consistent, debuted at number 2. I forgot who debuted at number 1. I think there was a big push to try to get him to number 1, but again, ongoing relevance and the ability to innovate within the whole metal genre, where you can go so far your career of at this point now, 25 years as we record this in 2024. That's a pretty good career, right? Now you can continue to expand and be relevant and develop. So we were talking a lot about Eloy, the new drummer, and again the different band members that they've had throughout the generation. But one thing I thought was kind of cool, we talked about just the I want to hit on this a little bit, Stephen, and get your kind of take on it. So we talked about, and I want to go through kind of 3 categories of influences that Slipknot. I'm going to start with members. There's about 4 members here that I pulled out of their kind of personal influences. I'll start with Corey Taylor. He's been pretty vocal and open about kind of his wide range, citing from Johnny Cash to Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
And really in that, with such a diverse musical taste, it's also contributed to his vocal style. which from the first record and maybe even the second, you weren't thinking, at least some, this guy just screams, he yells, but then all of a sudden he breaks out melody. And then just the phrasing and the development over years. And then, somewhere in the middle of the Slipknot career is when Stone Sour, which Stone Sour actually is older than Slipknot, when they first came together. And you go, wait a second, this guy's talented. He's got a great voice and they can write some great songs. And I don't even know if we have enough time to even talk about Stone Sour. So maybe we'll just hit on it just a little bit, but again, I appreciate that so much when, and I'll finish the other guys in a second, but just certainly and there's been much talk about this where, Corey Taylor has been interviewed or fans come up to him and he reminds everybody, and it's all relative, but, oh, you're like a superstar, which he is. He's a rock star. He's a superstar, but, are these guys the most, well-off and wealthy individuals? Yes, no doubt. They make a good living,
Yeah.
Are they U2 or Michael Jackson or any of that? No, they're not. That's a whole other level. Selling 30 million records. Who knows what their record deals were early on? Who knows, how the split was with Roadrunner? Certainly streaming music. Artists basically get ripped off, and the ones that make the music are the ones that have, a billion streams, right? The top end artists, the Taylor Swifts, everybody like that, where they don't need streaming music to make their career. Where some people, that's going to make a difference, right? That's going to pay their bills, touring, selling merchandise. So again, I'm sure they're just fine in that regard. I've seen some Jim Root videos of his guitars and his cars. So again, these guys aren't living paycheck to paycheck, but it's a tough gig.
Yeah, well, real quick, I don't mean to interrupt. I apologize, but you mentioned Jim Root, and of all the band members in that band, he's the one that I vacillate to the most. If you go to watch some of his videos and listen to him talk, first of all, he's the coolest cat in the world.
Yeah.
Yes, he did play with Stone Sour for a little bit. And that's when I was introduced to Slipknot, because that just kind of YouTube, and then that algorithm pulls up this, and I was like, oh, hey, check that out. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know Corey actually did a band, and actually he just did I'm gonna mess it up. Sorry, Corey CMF tour.
Yeah.
CMFT, whatever it is.
Corey Mother
and did another little solo
Taylor.
stint. Yeah. I don't know how that guy has the amount of energy. That might have been why he had a little bit of a breakdown recently. But
yeah.
But Jim Root is for some reason is what, and being a drummer, I'm like, oh yeah, these drummers are that. I'm like, but if you listen to Jim Root play, this guy shreds.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's so talented. And not only that, but he's giant. He's like this huge guy. But he plays Fender Telecasters, which is kind of more of a jazzy, nerdy, Happy Days kind of a guitar. But he has all these different versions of it. And for those that are, if you're watching this, check out some of just YouTube Jim Root, and this guy's such a cool. Yeah, you're right, with his cars too. Yeah, he loves his cars, and he'll take you in a ride for it and blaze up and down the street in Idaho. So
yeah,
cool.
there are some cool things. Yeah, his, and you hit on it right there. His influences, and not artists so much as more so just genres: classic rock, metal, jazz, and certainly all that contributes to just their complex and their layered guitar sound. Because again, going back and revisiting half their catalog, and I'm going to pick up the remainder on my drive to and from work tomorrow. So I'll be all geared up. I didn't have caffeine, like coffee this morning, and I was all ready to go because you're driving, at 7 a.m. listening to Slipknot. It has a similar effect. So
well, that's how it is on Tuesdays when you're doing your show and I'm driving home for work after working for 11 hours. I'm going, this is exactly what I need. This is drive home music every time.
Yeah. but that's great. No, again, he's really interesting, and yeah, cool cat. I can see that. Um, and there was some other episodes that I watched where he just breaks down all his gear, and his
Yeah,
setup, and it's
yeah,
awesome just to walk through. This is how I get these sounds. This is the combination of pedals. These are the different amps I use, um, and his again, when you reach a certain stature, you have a roadie or a tech that actually
yeah,
hits your pedals. So all his pedals are behind, behind the stage, behind the gear, and the guy's there. His job is,
yeah.
okay,
They're doing
trigger
all the
that pedal.
pedal
Yeah.
pushing. Yeah,
Um,
he probably just does a crybaby. And
that's when you
he's
know that you've made it, when you don't even have to touch your pedals. How's that? So
yeah, and a bit of an introvert too, which is kind of cool because
yeah.
I think I have a little bit of that quality. Um, I guess
No,
that's
I'm
maybe
I'm
why
right there
I
too.
identify with him and his he talks very technical, but he's also just level. He's like, he's not talking to the point
Mhm.
where you're like going, I need to Google these words. I need to figure out what he's saying. He's
Yeah.
just such a cool guy. Yeah, that's weird. Again, being a drummer and being totally enthralled with Jim Root. And not to
Yeah.
say, and I'm gonna totally butcher this, the other guitar player's name. Uh, wow. Oh, you have to edit this out because people are gonna get pissed at me for this. Um, but yeah, Jim Root, I think is other than Corey being vocals, maybe now Eloy, but Jim Root really is a lot of Slipknot. Maybe
Yeah.
if not 80% of Slipknot.
No, I totally agree. There's just something that is impactful. So we talked
Sorry.
about, a couple of the I don't want to say the main guys, but they certainly, Corey and Jim Root are probably some of the more prominent. But Eloy is going to be bucking for that position, just based
Oh
on
yeah.
where he's come, and some have followed his career and seen how he's been able to move up and go into different bands, but just when you watch him, just the player. So in that, the impact of certain individuals, it's also pretty cool to look at what other bands were influenced by Slipknot. And before I do that, I want to talk about what influenced Slipknot and then the bands that they've influenced, and kind of compare and contrast, because there's some overlap, which is kind of cool, where
Right.
even bands that have been active for a number of years can draw influence from, like, their peers. Sometimes it's from, oh, I was really into the Rolling Stones or Pink Floyd, and that's why I play music these days, versus your contemporaries, which to me, that's what it's all about. Everybody can come together. So
Sure.
in that, as much as they've influenced a diverse range of artists and genres themselves, some of their key influences that shape their style, Metallica and Slayer. I think, you can put that side by side by most people that have been in
For
any,
sure.
heavy
For
metal,
sure.
thrash
Yeah.
band, just because it's just, it's such a major impact. But then you talk about, and you kind of used the term alternative earlier, and and some people, whoever those people are, I think it doesn't matter, but don't like the moniker of new metal. But be it alternative
Yeah.
metal or new metal, it came about in the early 90s. Korn and Deftones definitely,
Great band.
you know are awesome. The again, these are Slipknot music influenced by, that influenced them. So
Yeah.
Korn and Deftones were about, 5, 6 years in front of them as far as when their releases came out. Both Korn and Deftones, and being able to see those bands in many, 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 many club shows. Little
Yeah.
tiny places up to arenas. It was awesome, but they definitely had an impact on Slipknot. You mentioned industrial, in the last episode. Ministry, Nine Inch Nails were big influences, and you hear
Yeah.
that kind of chaotic industrial, metal, like if you worked in a metal shop, or
I think
something like that, just the
when I
pounding.
think of the hitting the keg,
Yeah,
that yeah.
yeah. I mentioned, also it kind of had a punk feel. Black Flag was a big influence on them. you
Yep.
know. And then you get into the more death metal and extreme bands, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse. But
Ugh.
then you get into, that's where now some of the melody comes from. That's where some more of the willingness to kind of experiment with different sounds. You got Faith No
Hmm.
More and Alice in Chains, who I
Yeah.
love both those bands, definitely top 10 bands for me. So you take this stew, these ingredients, and you put it together. And that's what you get. You get Slipknot. So
And you
it's
get Mr. Bungle.
yeah, yeah. And so it's pretty awesome to have all
Yeah.
that. The
Awesome.
Now let's kind of focus on really quick and I'll give you some time to chime in. Sorry I went through that kind of quick, but
No, it's fine.
here are some bands that not necessarily, well, they're all active now, current bands. And one of them, Knocked Loose, who I've played on the show recently, just came out with a new record and it debuted, almost made top 20 on Billboard. I think debuted at 23 on Billboard. But Knocked Loose kind of has that heavy and chaotic sound, but definitely influenced by Slipknot.
Yeah.
Bring Me the Horizon, Korn. Not only they influenced them, they were influenced by them. Um,
Yeah.
Lamb of God, Avenged
Oh,
Sevenfold. Again,
yeah.
Avenged Sevenfold, inspired by Slipknot. Mushroom Head, not a big Mushroom Head fan. You look at them, and there's always been a comparison. I don't know if you call them Slipknot Junior. I'm not being derogatory in that sense, but they were always the next tier or two down from Slipknot for sure. But they had the mask, they had the theatrical performances. So maybe in that they got a little overlooked just because it was too much of a copycat. Um, Not sure. Trivium, I actually liked their singer Matt Heafy, as just listening to his podcast and his
I've
music
seen them live.
show.
They're
I've seen
good.
Trivium live a few times. I don't like the band, but I like their singer. I don't know why. I've seen them probably half a dozen times. They're a great band musically. There's just something that doesn't resonate, but I'll get off the hate train there. Bullet for My Valentine, a couple more on here. Parkway Drive, of Mice and Men, Motionless in White, Code Orange, love them. Again, Knocked Loose and Behemoth. So this is, bands that were influenced by Slipknot. So here you are again, 25 years, and you have
Yeah.
some bands that are at the top of the game. I would say out of all those bands, Lamb of God and Knock Loose, along with Avenge and Korn, of course. But as far as like right now, some of the at the top of their game bands that were influenced by that. Again, everywhere from just the sound to live performance, just the integration of all the visual elements. You see their show, and you saw them not too long ago, Stephen, right? Just
Yeah.
like you get a show, right? It's not just
Oh,
guys standing, in one spot on the stage, playing good music. There's just everything about it.
yeah. I saw them at the last time we saw Slipknot was at 5 Point before it closed down.
Mhm.
And if you've been, I don't know if you've been to 5 Point, but it's
I
fairly
have, yeah.
small. But you can be on the floor area and you're literally right at the stage,
Mhm.
and they still have the Dodger Vision, whatever you want to call it, the cameras and the screens and all that.
Right.
But you don't need it. I mean, you're so I'm just so enthralled with looking at it all. You just it's just it's such an amazing show, and I really want to go see this 25-year anniversary tour. And
Mhm.
I mentioned you had made a post about a ticket that you went and saw that
Yeah.
was virtually pennies on it. Maybe back then it was expensive for us, but when I want to go and see a concert and I look at ticket prices, and it's like, $300, $400 a ticket.
Yeah.
I'm not, I know, it's got to really be something that I'm enthralled with and I want to go see. And I've seen them twice, and I'm sure they're going to play some of most of the songs that I just watched them play last year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the ticket prices, it's just so out of control, and that might be it for another show. But
Yeah,
um,
no, for sure. Yeah, I definitely
it's
want to talk about
out of
that. And
control.
and the ticket that I posted earlier today was the Beastie Boys. So today, May 30th, 1994, and I'll give you a little bit of backstory on that ticket.
Awesome.
So, and this could be a whole other episode, so I won't make it too long. I'll give this as a little teaser, but that night, I won't bury the lead. That night, through a number of lifelong friends, just by happenstance, met my future wife. And so we were at the Capitol Studios, which is across the street from the Palace on Vine Street. And it was going to be it was a Tuesday night, because that's when records used to come out. I think it was a Tuesday. Records used to come out on Tuesday instead of Friday.
Right.
So that was the record release party for Beastie Boys. Ill Communication. So we partied beforehand in the tower at Capitol, and then we walked across the street, stumbled across the street, went into the show,
Yeah, sure.
and I'll encapsulate this all in kind of a brief thing. But what kind of, to this day, probably sealed the deal, amongst many other things, of course, just me in general, right? But I'm standing at the bar upstairs at the Palace. You've probably been there to see a show or two in our lifetime. Were you at that show in 1994?
Yeah, we probably were.
So I'm standing at the bar, and I get a tap on my shoulder, because I was just about to order. So I turn around and kind of, maybe not eye to eye, look up slightly. I'd have to look up and see exactly how tall John Taylor from Duran Duran is. Not majorly taller than me, but enough where he's all, hey, I don't have my license. Can you buy me a beer?
What?
And
Really?
I'm all, you want me to buy you a beer? I go, you're the big rock star. Now, mind you, I had a few drinks in me, and then the night only progresses, and this really is a whole other show. But he goes, no, I have it. So he hands me $100 bill. And he goes, get me a Heineken. So now we know what John Taylor, at least back in 94, drinks, Heineken.
Yeah.
And get a beer, and get a drink for yourself and a couple of your buddies, something like that. So I ordered that.
Wow.
I'm sure I gave him the change. I don't really remember. I think the story has grown over the years, where I just left a generous tip, and I kept the money. But I'm sure, John Taylor, if you're listening, of course, I gave you back your change from the $100 bill. So bought him a beer.
Wow.
And
that's a cool gig.
Yeah, and that was one of many. So I'll say the night only progressed to there was Adam Durowitz from Counting Crows, had a long conversation with him. We hung out for a while, which was kind of crazy. Barry Sobel, who is a comedian. I was told later by my buddies that were at the show that I hired him to come over to do stand-up at my apartment, and we were going to pay him with 3 cases of beer. And he had already accepted that prior.
Yeah.
And if you have to go back and you could find clips of Barry Sobel, and then Scott Ian ran into him. I don't remember the conversation, but it was this combination of just different people. And of course, that what made the whole night is, Melissa saw me buying John Taylor a beer, and Duran Duran happened to be her all-time favorite band. So that we're like, oh, wait a second, who is this guy? And clearly from there, it was up to me to make make a difference. I'll end it at that. But
so cool.
was, again, that's the significance of May 30th. Clearly, that record will forever be in the pantheon of top releases for me that night as a whole. And I still, as I'm thinking through it, remember vivid pieces of that night throughout.
I got a 6 degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon with that.
Yeah.
So my favorite musician in Duran Duran is John Taylor, because that guy is one of the best bass players.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ever. If you go and listen to like Rio and just do the bass tracks separate from everything and listen to what this guy can do, this guy's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And that's so wild that you say that. I was like, because that's another one. We're like one musician from a band. I'm not the drummer.
Yep.
Roger Taylor's a drummer. and all the Taylors in the band are not related for
Yeah,
those
exactly. Yeah.
that either do or do not know. Um, but John, what has always been was like, well, not only that, but he was the prettiest in the band too. It's like when you look at Duran Duran, you're like, that guy's got the looks. He's getting all the chicks.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mayday Mile have, but that just might be my weird.
No,
Anyhow,
no, for
but
sure.
they,
And he was, and I'm sure just were in that sight line, as you say, that's so funny because he was the, the hot guy. I guess, all of them were,
yeah,
well, maybe not all
well,
of them,
yeah,
but, all of them kind of stood out. But I'm sure in that sight line was John Taylor, and I happened to be like, the blurry guy next to him. And then just by association of the
that's so
beer and the
awesome.
exchange, and then, the conversations ensued, and here we are now 30 years
That
later. But yeah.
that beats my story P next to Tom Araya at the Armored Saint listening party. So
Now that's still a good one. That's still cool. Yeah.
we did have a small conversation while we were in there. It was not while we were having a
Yeah. He did
waz,
tap
but
you on the shoulder, did he? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, he
Yeah.
wasn't looking down into my trough, but
Offering you money. Yeah. Um,
yeah, yeah, I'll pay if you don't tell me what it looks like. No,
right.
and that was kind of a cool little thing because I was totally into Slayer back then, and I was like,
Yeah.
holy crap, I can't believe Tom. Anyhow, that
Yeah.
that those are, and I've seen so many famous people. You have to. My mom used to date the original kid from Lassie, so we would go to these star-studded telethons, and I would see all these famous
Yeah.
people, and I was never like, "Can I have your autograph?" I just be like checking them out, going, "That's kind of cool." I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. They're just regular people. I don't want to bother them.
Right. Right.
It's like the same with you seeing uh, John Taylor. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, no problem. Whatever you need."
Right.
It is what it is. I've just never. I mean, I'm starstruck, but I'm not going to be like,
Oh my
oh my
God.
god,
Yeah. Yeah.
can you give me a kiss or
Yeah.
whatever? Can you sign my arm? I'm going to get a tat. I don't have any room for that anyhow. But
Right. You
um,
can do right.
but I think that is the coolest story. Wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's so
No, no,
awesome.
no. It's so yeah, every
Very
every
cool.
year it's fun to reflect back on that. But yeah, what
So
what
cool.
what what got your interest? It was funny. I saw your comment on it earlier. It's like, man, the ticket price. And I looked at it and then I commented to you. It's like, good, I didn't have to pay for the ticket. Um,
Right.
but yeah, it was 1850. So same
Isn't that
thing when
amazing?
we've talked about other shows before, going to Judas Priest, and don't worry, yes, folks, we'll get back to Slipknot, but we had to take a little slight detour. Um,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about, in a future episode, and we always tease future topics to get people coming back. It's like, yeah, shows, ticket prices, where you could get in for sub $10, like for a major act, going back way back in the day before I went to shows, before I was even born. You look at
Right.
some like Zeppelin tickets or the Who, it's like 350 day of show, $4.
Yeah.
It's like, what the
Yeah.
hell? It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, times have changed for sure. And yeah, the new Slipknot tour, which by the way, I forgot until I was reading these band names. Knocked Loose is their one of the openers. I forget
Yes,
who
I
else
saw
is
that.
on the tour. So that isn't coming through. I live outside Nashville. That, at least on that run, it's not coming through here. But again, aside from wanting to take out a small loan to get a ticket, if they
Insane.
do, and I'll sometimes get a lot of tickets off of StubHub or SeatGeek or whatever. And aside from the sometimes obnoxious fees they add to it, sometimes you can get a ticket for pretty cheap, and it's all told, it's not a ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
I'll go to some shows.
That's like
The
Vivid Seats is that you're like, oh wait a minute, 100 okay, $180, two tickets, and then you look and it's like 900. I'm like, what? How did
right.
$400 go to $900? And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's fired. But what I do want to make a comment on is that I like that Slipknot and these bigger bands are taking these upcoming rising bands and going, let's shove these guys up and get them into the limelight.
Mhm.
Because Knock Loose is that's huge up and go. Real quick, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna and there's another. I just stumbled onto this band called Kitty. Have you heard of
Kitty.
them?
Absolutely.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph, they're amazing.
Yeah. And actually, that's three of the four members' bands' names too.
From
But
yeah, but I just stumbled on it today. That's how I like the algorithm with being with Metal Blade, because it'll
Mhm.
just shove me this new music, which I'll often send to you during your
Yeah.
radio show.
Yeah.
And I was
So
like, well, I was like, what is going on?
So they've been away. It for at least 9 years. I thought it was longer,
Yeah.
but I remember hearing that. But they came out when they were teenagers, and probably a good 20 years ago. Um, and I remember
And they had
going
mentioned
to,
that.
yeah, I remember
Yeah, they had
going to a
mentioned that they
show.
just, yeah, sorry.
So real quick, what we'll see, and I know we're up on time, so
Yeah, we're
I
gonna
think we
wrap up.
talked a lot about Slipknot. We did 2 episodes plus, again, we talk so we kind of jump around a little bit. But again, we ask you guys in case we just end in the next minute or so, leave comments if you're interested in hearing about other bands. We're always
Yeah,
open to it.
suggestions.
We want to hear from you. We want to talk about it. So again, as always, we appreciate what you guys well, I appreciate you, Stephen. I appreciate you making
I
the
appreciate you
time.
too, Scott.
And
We
again,
have what's called metal ADHD,
we
where
yeah, we'll jump
we
around.
bounce, we bounce.
So real quick on Kitty, this is kind of a funny story. See if I can do it in a minute or less before we get kicked off the air.
Yeah.
So let's say 20 years ago, give or take, maybe a little bit longer, was on a business trip to Chicago. So we had a kind of a corporate get together, and for the northern region office just outside of downtown Chicago. So we took a party bus into the city. We went to a restaurant, had a meal before, or not beforehand. No one knew the event of the evening was going to happen next. So we went there
Hmm.
for dinner. We walk
Cool.
outside next door to House of Blues. I look up Kitty. I'm like, oh, Kitty. No one with me had any clue who they were, but they're like, "You guys want to go?" So Al Zabo, who was at the time the VP, goes, "Yeah, guys, let's go." He was a great guy, great guy. So I go, "Oh, well, it's I don't know, it's probably 20 bucks." He goes, "I got it."
Hmm.
Steps up and he goes, "I need 16 tickets for Kitty." And the girl
Wow.
at the box office goes, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "Scott, am I sure?" I'm all, "Yeah, you're sure." He goes, they were going because they let's follow Scott on this. So they all walk in, everybody orders a drink. Was Kitty started yet? I don't think so. I think we got in right after, and I have no idea. I'll have to go find this and see who was opening for them. Um, but we got in, let's say within a few minutes, they started playing, everybody's drinking a beer or a cocktail, and they experienced Kitty. Most of the group made it through the entire show, just to be good sports. But yeah, I'd seen them once or twice after that, but that was just one of those, sometimes the greatest experience, totally unexpected, not there for that
Yeah.
reason.
So
Walk
cool.
outside, look up on the sign, Kitty, House of Blues, Chicago. Let's go. And
Yeah.
yeah, now that they're back, though, that new music, that is some good stuff. Man, that I'm like highly impressed. I'm like, they're back, and this might even be. I really like their early stuff. If you haven't gone back and revisited the early stuff, it's really good. But this
Yeah.
stuff, it's grown, it's developed over the years. They've just become better
That's stuff that,
songwriters and better musicians,
yeah,
and it's good.
that's definitely no consideration radio music, because
Yeah.
I caught the first clip I saw, and it's what I love about algorithms with metal and YouTube, because it throws things at me that I'm like, oh, let me check this out.
Oh
And
yeah.
I was like, what is, they were so fucking awesome.
Mm.
I was like, check it out. They're just balls to the walls. If you close your eyes, you would not know they were girls.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, no, not at all.
just
It is. It's so
fucking
good.
amazing. Fucking
So
amazing.
real quick, we're end on this.
Yes.
Over the years, Slipknot has been able to tour with tons of bands.
Yes.
Here's some of the more notable acts they've toured with. So in 2004, they opened for Metallica. That'd be kind of a cool setup. Metallica, Slipknot.
Yeah.
Toured as part of the Pledge of Allegiance tour in 2001 with System of a Down.
Mm,
Co-headlined in 2016 with Marilyn Manson.
interesting.
Toured multiple times, including the Subliminal Verses in 2005 with Lamb of God. Killswitch, again, the Jägermeister tour, Anthrax, number of festivals, Behemoth, in the 2019 Knotfest, which they're also, talk about, the impact that Ozfest had on everybody. They came out and did Knotfest, which is still
Yeah.
going today. That's awesome. Just a collective roadshow concert.
Those were the two shows we saw where both were not fest.
Yeah, that's a great, that's a great package. Gojira,
Fun.
we love
Oh,
Gojira. Yeah.
that's going to be another show too.
Absolutely. Trivium, again, we talked about Trivium, and then of course,
Yeah.
Stone Sour, being just part of both bands, also been able to play with them because in some instances, both Stone Sour and Slipknot have shared festival slots.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Talk about doing a dual role for Corey.
yeah, absolutely. So I can't even imagine that. So, through that, again, we talked about earlier the, number of records, over 30 million records sold. Again, that's wild for the band, how they started and what they were able to do, and then the challenges that they've gone through. And now really, with Eli, what we're giving him a lot of props because I think it's deserving of it. But is he like gonna like ignite them? Because you talked about it as a drummer, Stephen, you will carry, the drummer will carry the tempo, right? Will carry the
Yeah.
speed, carry the
Yeah.
pulse of the band in a live setting and even in the studio.
Yeah.
Again, seeing the clips so far of what he's put out there, uh, they have this renewed energy, this
They
this
do.
vigor that it's, I'm interested to hear what their next record sounds like. And again, if I can get to see them on the road, certainly already seen some live footage. It's impressive. 25 years in, and they're not slowing down.
No, no. Yeah, I really want to go, but again, the funds, we've got other things coming up, but I've already bought 10 Iron Maiden tickets for a bunch of guys that like Iron Maiden. So, uh,
No, for
not,
sure. Yeah.
I got a second mortgage on my house, but I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
No.
And by the way, Iron Maiden tickets are only $125 a piece.
Okay.
Blink 182 tickets are $500 a piece. So do the math.
Yeah.
And real quick, a couple bands that I want to talk about in the future: Lorna Shore and
Yeah.
Sleep Token. I want to get into some of the harder core.